Hi, I'm Lucy, I'm autistic and I have co-occurring mental health difficulties which can lead to severe meltdowns. Whilst autism alone doesn't cause mental health issues and self-destructive urges, the challenges which go alongside being autistic can create those in people with mental health struggles. Things which might seem small to you can be huge to us. Too much change or stress can literally make me suicidal. Sensory overload can sometimes contribute to a meltdown, which can contain significant self-harm. We've been misunderstood and misinterpreted our whole lives, and social and communication difficulties or conflict with other people can also cause self-harm urges. Feeling alienated from society and realising that we may always feel this way can make us not want to be here. I've been asked to come up with 5 things which I would like professionals to know when considering self-harm and autism. Number 1, self-harm as part of meltdowns should be discussed and handled very differently. I've self-harmed both during and outside of meltdowns. These are incredibly different experiences. In one instance, I'm largely in control, and in the other, I am absolutely not. Trying to tackle self-harm in the way that you would with non-autistic individuals is likely to exclude effective and safe meltdown management. Specific help is needed to deal with meltdown management and keeping someone who may self-harm during a meltdown safe during these. Number 2, listen to and believe when someone talks about risk factors for them and take them seriously. This is the case even if it seems counterintuitive or illogical to you, or it goes against your training. I had a therapeutic relationship break down and end due to a conversation about self-harm contracting. My then therapist wanted me to commit to going to A&E every time I self-harmed, regardless of the severity. When I discussed my reasoning behind not wanting to do this, I felt dismissed and invalidated. When telling her that if she made me commit to that, it made the risk of more severe self-harm higher because I'd feel as though I needed to make it worth it in order to visit A&E in the first place, I wasn't listened to. It felt like the equivalent of trying to train me out of self-harming without considering or listening to what might happen instead as a result of this contract. This would also make someone more likely to then hide their self-harming. Autistic people often like rules and guidelines, so if I'd committed to that, then I'd have felt obliged to follow through with it, and I'd be worried about getting in trouble or failing therapy, because that's the way my brain works. So either I'd have made sure I self-harmed badly enough to need stitches, or I'd have hidden the fact that I was doing it at all through fear. You shouldn't be afraid of your therapist. You can't make progress in that environment. Things work better if the service user and therapist decide the rules together and they make sense and they feel more safe than unsafe to us. Number 3, be mindful of making assumptions. Assumptions are never a good thing, regardless of neurotype, and yet it's something which we all encounter repeatedly. This is particularly risky when it's at play within mental health services. Assuming the reasons for and the motivations behind someone self-harming is often dangerous and perpetuates the stigma that we're manipulative and attention-seeking, as well as alienating people from services and making them less likely to seek out support. The only assumption you should make is that if someone is self-harming, they're likely experiencing emotional pain, and even then you need to check it out more with the person. Don't assume based on the way someone is presenting. A sudden decrease in self-harm might seem like someone is recovering, but it actually may indicate that they've given up or are damaging or planning to damage themselves in another way. Also, someone talking bluntly about wanting to kill themselves might almost seem like a protective factor because they're not hiding it, but it might also be the fact that autistic people are often more blunt and matter-of-fact. If you ask me a direct question about my self-harm or suicidal ideation, I'll usually answer it honestly, and a lot of non-autistic people won't react in this way, so don't let that skew your judgment. Number 4, listen to what I say and not how I say it. I frequently use this phrase, listen to what I say and not how I say it. My tone of voice and the way I portray things has been problematic in various mental health settings. It once had me discharged from services after the initial assessment because I was unintentionally masking so much that the professionals thought that I must be fine despite me being in crisis and being painfully honest with the words that I said. And this happens a lot. I've also had difficulties evoking helpful responses from professionals elsewhere. For example, when I was in group therapy and I expressed suicidal feelings, but I said it in a fairly flippant, almost jokey way, which can be the norm for me, and nobody batted an eyelid. The person sat a couple of seats away proceeded to express very similar thoughts and feelings, but because she said it in tears, it brought out an incredibly different reaction from both the therapists and the other group members. That was one of the standout times for me, pre-diagnosis, when I realised that the way that I said things didn't really match the way that other people did. Autistic people are masking a significant amount of the time, and sometimes that's completely involuntary. Masking isn't just hiding things and pretending to be okay in the way you think it is. Sometimes it's being very honest, but there may be being a real mismatch between words, tone of voice, and body language. I know that this is a struggle for me, and yet I still can't help it. You might not be having the conversations you think you are. There can be misunderstandings happening on both sides, and clear communication, as well as creating a safe environment to check intended meaning, is incredibly valuable. I have to go into appointments and beg people to listen to my words. I feel like I'm baring my soul and blatantly crying out for help, but professionals just see someone whose presentation is fairly calm and who can communicate clearly and concisely, and therefore my words don't matter. I'm tired of my words and experiences not meaning anything. Number 5, a self-harmer's relationship with their wounds and scars can be complex. The mindset which some self-harmers can have may not be common knowledge. We might judge or compare ourselves based on the quality, by which I mean objective severity, of our injuries. For those of us who have this mindset, comments can have the opposite effect to what's intended. Telling somebody that their scars aren't bad or comparing them to something else might not be heard in the way that you'd assume. I had stretch marks once, which was a strange comparison, especially from a nurse. Accidental injuries aren't processed in the same way as intentional ones. If I encounter somebody with visibly worse self-harm scarring than me, then that plays with my mind in a way which is really difficult. I feel as though I'm not a real self-harmer, that my scars are pathetic comparatively, that I'm ridiculous for even thinking of myself in that way or trying to get support based on it. Realistically, I'm constantly getting stared at and ending up in unwanted conversations with strangers about my scars, but when I look down, they don't look bad to me most of the time. Whereas you might reassure somebody who had accidentally been injured that their injury isn't that bad, won't scar, or it's superficial, which is my least favourite word for this reason, taking this approach with someone who's deliberately injured themselves can, in fact, increase the feelings of inadequacy and genuinely increase the risk of further, more severe self-harm. Not to mention the earlier point about becoming more unwilling to seek treatment unless it's clear that medical intervention is going to be required, as well as how we are sometimes treated when we present at A&E, especially if you've been given a borderline personality disorder diagnosis, which is highly stigmatised. Autistic people often think in quite black and white terms. For me, either I need stitches and have taken pills, and therefore I'm valid enough to attend A&E, or not. If not, I'm not going to waste the NHS's time when we all know that it's on its knees. All of that means that over time, the severity of wounds increases as we both try to prove to ourselves that we're able to do this one thing well and are chasing the feeling of release which may only be achieved with increasingly worse wounds. Autistic people often feel inadequate. We're told that we're weird and wrong and treated badly throughout our lives. I've had decades of this, whether explicit or more subtle, and this can really impact on the way we view ourselves. Our self-worth can be through the floor, and this can have a huge influence on our likelihood to self-harm. So that's my 5 tips for professionals, and I hope that this has provided some food for thought. Thanks for listening.